Tony Mark, can you tell me where you're from?
I'm from a little village called Monastrevin in County Kildare, Ireland.
And tell me a little bit, paint a picture in your eyes of your village.
Well, there was never any industry in our village. I was talking to a parish priest one time. I was home on holidays, and I asked him about this, and he said he'd seen some documents that said that there wasn't to be any industry in this village, and that eventually there would be, he did say, a number of houses built for the incoming population, and this is exactly what's happened. And there's still no industry in the village. Yes.
So describe, what was the village like when you were growing up?
Oh, you came down the main street and there was a line of shops that are not there anymore, and that have their produce outside the doors, like the oranges and apples and all the rest. And there was a couple of butcher shops. A small village. If I told you that the population of the parish consisted of 2 masses on a Sunday morning, first and second mass, and that was the size of the population that time. And I served my time for a while as a butcher, and of course we didn't have the deep freeze or anything like that, so the butcher knew what he could sell, so he only killed that amount. And so yes, and it was, I suppose, when you're that age, everything is wonderful, even though you're poor, but you're so happy with everything. And if you're really healthy, it helps as well. And we, crowd of us, on a summer's day, we had the canal, the river Barrow ran through Monastrevin and the canal, and on a summer's day we'd leave school and go down for a swim. Have any swimming togs or anything like that, just strip off and dive in, and to dry yourself you ran up and down the bank. You know, it was we had Christian brothers and nuns. There was no lay teachers, just all Christian brothers and nuns. And
how was the Christian brothers? Was it strict? Because you knew my father, and he had that line of, you can put your hand up to answer a question, but there's no guarantee you'll get it back.
No, that was right. There were. But of course, thinking back on it afterwards, they were very frustrated young men, and they weren't living a natural sort of a life at all. So it was no wonder that they could be cross. Everybody started off going to the convent, the nuns, until they were about 7, and then they went to the Christian brothers. Well, they made their first communion in the convent, and then went on to the Christian brothers. Well, that's the way it happened in our village anyway.
Did you feel you got an education? Did it feel like a basic education?
I wasn't there long enough to get a decent education. And at that time, even though they said that it was compulsory for people to go to school, but they turned a blind eye to an awful lot of it. Like, if people didn't go to school, nobody followed them up. It was... I've said this before, I had to walk in about 3 miles to school. There's no other way of getting there except walking. And in the winter time, you were cold and very often hungry, because you'd take a sandwich with you, but you'd have it ate sometimes before you'd reach the school. There was no central heating in the school, and you'd be just cold. So there was lots of other things on your mind except learning, like getting a feed or getting warm.
And a large family.
Youngest of 9, me. Yeah.
And here we are in 2022, but you say, right, your parents were born in the 19th century?
Well, 1896, both of them, yes.
So you talk about being hungry. I mean, your parents were only born 40, 50 years after the famine, where 1 million people died. So that element you brought in of hunger, it was a big factor in Irish history.
Well, that's right. And I think that I should treasure every day I'm alive. When I think back on it, my family got through the famine. My father went to war, came back alive, got married, had 9 children. I'm the 9th. Why didn't they stop at 8? And so I think to myself, you're a very lucky guy to be here at all. Like,
So the butcher shop, was that your first job?
It was, yes. I was about 13 and a half when I started that, yes.
And what about, I mean, it's not that far from Kildare, are you?
No, it's only...
Was that though a big journey?
6 mile. 6 mile, well. You walked, but you walked to dances. That was the thing. When I was young, I didn't care about drink or cigarettes or anything like that, but I had to dance. I loved dancing, and I would walk miles and miles. And I've walked to Newbridge, which is much further. And at that time, you had the big bands like Jimmy Dunny and all those big bands. And the dances went on until 3 o'clock in the morning, called all-night dances. I often met my dad going out to work when I was going in from a dance.
And what about Dublin?
Dublin was out of the question. Far too far. Yeah.
And can you remember the day you left?
Remember it well. Yes, it was actually before my 18th birthday, 1955, and this friend of the family who had left on Streven and went to England. Tommy Burns was his name. And he'd come home on holidays. And that was the time of the white fivers in this country. And he was a single man, and he got a bit of money. And he asked me if I'd like to come to England. And I said, Tommy, I've got 1 suit of clothes. I've got no money. I'm in no position to go anywhere. He said, don't worry about that. He said, I'll see you okay. And my mother piped up and said, why don't you go while you're getting the chance? Because there was absolutely nothing in Ireland at that time. I mean, nothing. And anyway, we got on the bus. He wanted to see some people in Dublin. So we stopped in Dublin and we booked into the Sunshine Cafe on Aston Keys. And we were there for a week. This was the Teddy Boy era as well. We were there for a week and going dancing, and we used to dance in the Galway Arms and the AOH. And I said to Tommy, I said, my mother thinks I'm in England. At that time, of course, there was no telephones or anything like that. And so we had to send her a telegram to say that I was still in Dublin after a week. Anyway, I've heard of people leaving Ireland with £5 in their pocket or £10 in their pocket. I left Ireland with nothing in my pocket, but I was very, very lucky to have the friend that I had.
And what about the first time that you went back? Sometimes some people say there was a bit of a cool reception as when you're leaving, you know?
No, nothing like that. No, it was, well, of course, I belong to such a big family. My mum and dad has 67 grandchildren. So, and I had loads of uncles and aunts that time. And of course, you went round and visited them all and that sort of thing. No, it was, you always got a great welcome when you went home.
And when's the last time you actually went back?
I was there last year, yeah.
Changed?
Oh, changed, yes, changed. I'm afraid that Ireland has gained a lot. Monetary wise, gained a lot, which is nice. But they've also lost a lot. Like, you know, don't think there's not the same nature in the young people that they used to be, and that's understandable because when I'm talking about when I was young, people looked after one another. They had to look after one another, and everybody seemed to have a wonderful nature. But now, of course, they don't have to. Everybody's well financed and nice houses and cars and things like that. But it's gone from lifting the latch and opening the door at one time when you didn't have to say that you coming or anything like that. You know, you could walk into any house and the tea was made.
And when you moved to Harlow, and we go back to Ireland here just a second, you were very much involved in sport, weren't you? And a number of your children, in fact, I just recollected the times that Stuart would humiliate me by beating me at cross country, but I'm not bitter. But were you involved in sport when you were in Ireland?
No. I wasn't, because I don't know, I never seemed to get involved. But like I say, I left before my 18th birthday, and there was lots of other things going on. But I never got into the sport there. But when I came to Harlow, I did, and we formed a Gaelic football side here, because there was Irishmen from every county in Ireland was living in Harlow at that time, the new town being built and whatnot. But yes, and we had some good, decent players on the team, but we didn't have really enough. There was too many like me that wasn't all that good. but it was great fun. Yeah.
And when you were bringing, again, we'll go back to Ireland about talking about culture. When you're bringing your children up, were you bringing them up as English children with Irish roots? Was there a balance?
I didn't get involved like that. I let them do their own thing, and I wouldn't force them into doing anything or anything like that. No.
And the county you're in, if anybody is, say, going across to Ireland and never been to, is there places you say you should go here, should go, even the whole of Ireland, you say you should go here, should go there? Or have you actually travelled a lot in Ireland,
No, not at all. No, I've travelled more in this country than I did in Ireland. And of course, when you go home for a holiday, you're going home to your relatives, and you don't get a chance much, to travel around. I've seen a little bit of Ireland, I did do a bit of tour of Kerry and that, and beautiful. And the weather is nice. It's great around Kerry, yeah, and Cork.
But your children go back to Ireland?
Well, one is there. She's coming back today, Julie. She goes back regularly, yes. And but the others now are settled. I've got two of my sons are in Finland, in Helsinki. Yeah. The youngest one, Brandon, he used to go over for St. Patrick's Day, and he met his Finnish wife, who became his wife. They got married in Cork, and then they decided to move back to Helsinki. She was a nurse, so they moved back to Helsinki. And then the second youngest, Rhodey, is a barber in London. He went over on holidays, liked it over there, and him and his wife and child moved over there, and he opened his own shop there, and they're still there, and they come home. They'll be home hopefully for my birthday now in the next few weeks.
And the house that you were brought up in, is it still there?
No, the ruins of it is there, but they put a dual carriageway through, and which was badly needed anyway, And it was, in a good thing, it was a way, because it was good because my brother Sean had gone back to look after my mum and dad when they were got to a certain age, and he was living there, and then he was getting fairly old himself. He was well retired and that, and when this dual carriageway was coming through, so he got a good price for the house, and he was able to go into the village where he was near the shops and the church and all the rest, and which was a blessing in a way, So yeah, but the old place is still there, and it's a house. I never, you hear people talking about the houses, and the house we lived in was nothing. It was a few stones thrown on top of each other. There was no foundation to it. You couldn't have footings and oversight. If you tried to get a footing where I was born in the bog, you'd supply Ireland with turf before you get down to solid ground. So it was just these few stones. But that had nothing to do with the home. The home was the happiest home anybody could have lived in. Although we didn't have any money, but we had love, oodles of love. And that was what made us, really.